We in a competition.
Is Counselor Boychuk not returning?
Um, I'm assuming he's coming back. I don't know. Good afternoon. I'm calling the Peace River Town Council Governance and Priorities Committee meeting of June 2nd to order at 5 p.m. And we have the agenda in front of us. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to add, under closed session, 11.2, intergovernmental relations.
You? Anything further? No. Okay, then would someone like to move the council adopt the June 2nd, 2025 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting agenda as amended? Councillor Good, so moves. All those in favor?
Counselor Shannon?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, it is carried. We have the minutes of the May 5th Governance and Priorities meeting in front of us. Were there any edits that someone has noticed for those? If not, would someone like to move the adoption of those? And I'll let them be the motion. Please.
I can move.
Okay, Councillor Shannon. Councillor Shannon moves that the council adopt the minutes of May 5th, 2025 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting as presented. Thank you, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Great, it is carried. Delegation presentations, we don't have any comments from the public. Doesn't look like we have. Review of bylaws and policies, none to be had. Unfinished business, the purchasing policy, P1221C, review with Mr. Mugford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council had requested to have a discussion regarding town's purchasing policy. Administration brought the policy forward at the May GMP meeting, and council requested some additional time to review the policy and table the matter until this meeting. So just as a reminder, current policy P1221C was approved by council in April of 2022. And we attached with this report the RFD from January 2022, which summarized the review policy, the review process for the policy and the associated argument with it. So again, at this point in time, we're just seeking, administration just seeking any feedback from council. And if there is a desire for council to have administration bring this policy back for a detailed review, we'd like to know which elements you'd like clarification on and what prioritization it should receive, given where we're at in this council's term. Thank you. I'll take your questions.
Thank you. So councillors? Councillor Carr, anything?
Yes,
for
I
report?
have a number of things. I just received a message from Councillor Boychuk that he can't get into the meeting.
Oh, he looks like he.
Oh, there he is now. Okay.
Thank you.
I had a few things in here that I want to just ask, if I may. On page 416, it refers that verbal quotes are acceptable as well as written quotes. Why and how? I know a verbal agreement is as binding as one, but I mean, how binding is that? Like, why would you accept verbal? I was just curious on that. I can read it if you like,
Yeah, so you're speaking under the method of purchase where it says request for
Yeah,
quotation.
yeah,
If possible, 3 verbal or written quotes for goods or service. So, and the financial limits on those types of transactions are between $1,000 and $5,000. Again, I could envision a situation where, given those dollar thresholds, there's a few vendors that are known that could be contacted by the individual seeking quotes to obtain just, like, over the phone type of quotes to establish what pricing will be for something. Because again, you're dealing with relatively low dollar limits for those types of transactions. But again, like, we could look into that and see whether or not that should be, whether verbal should or shouldn't be viewed as a valid thing. Like, it's something that, over time, as we've been, adhering to this policy and, following the methods of purchasing more closely. I find having strong documentation is always better, and so, in general, I would err on the side of a written quote is stronger evidence than verbal, but if you had a note in a file that said spoke with so-and-so and they quoted X on this day at this time, that is a form of evidence. It's just not as strong as, an email
It just-
or.
yeah, it just seemed funny because in this day and age, I find the word of people maybe doesn't have the same credibility it once did. So I
Sure.
was curious why.
Yeah, and again, I would think it would have to do with the financial limits associated with that type of transaction. Like, in general, one of the guiding principles of this type of thing is you wanna reduce the risk of those, of things happening, unintended things happening. But when you're dealing with those types of financial limits, it is on the lower end of, I guess, where the expectation for having that higher level of documentation would be, right? As we're spending larger dollar amounts, we want, the complexity and level of documentation associated with the methodology ramps up as you're dealing with higher dollar amounts.
That makes sense. May I keep going? On the page 8 of 16, businesses that are not pre-qualified will not be invited. Now, are those pre-qualifications, those are just advertised and anybody can pre-qualify type thing? And, or is that by invitation or how do you go about pre-qualifying? Like it says in the paragraph before that, publicly requests, but I mean, is that just noted on the town site type thing and is that a per job or do we pre-qualify contractors in general or what exactly, like, how does that work? I'm a little confused on that.
Just checking the direction. I've never actually gone through this ERF or PQ process myself, so.
So pre-qualification is a very specific process.
Okay.
And quite frankly, we haven't done any, if maybe a few in the past 5+ years. Where we would pre-qualify, actually, I believe maybe Director Kress has just recently for lawn mowing services, that type of thing. But it's always a public process. And how that public process is presented will depend on the service being acquired or requested. Maybe there's only 1 or 2 options in the community that might be invitation, or if it's a broader, there's multiple operators or businesses that'd be broadly advertised. So it really does depend, but usually everything is publicly advertised in some form or another, whether it's on the website, social media, newspaper advertising, and the such, yeah.
And it's based on a per job.
Not necessarily, pre-qualification can be used for multiple purposes. You could utilize pre-qualification for, as Director Kress may be using for lawn care services. Dealing with bylaw incidents, snow removal for sidewalk infractions under the bylaw. if individuals are not completing. We may use pre-qualifications for HVAC services. So we would do a pre-qualification of companies that could apply to be pre-qualified and get on a list that then they're called to offer services. We could pre-qualify engineers for specific engineering programs. Pre-qualification can be used for an abundance of different situations.
Do we do that? Like, for example, in my field of experience, a new plumbing company comes to town, would they request to pre-qualify?
We currently, we're probably not doing a full pre-qualification process for those types of services yet. There's always been the intention of doing so, but not always. We're not quite organized enough yet to get to a point where we're doing full pre-qualification for services potentially the town would use in all cases or in maintenance cases or whatnot. So if we do have a business that's new to the community, we always encourage them to reach out to us so that we know. And we have our business licensed directory now on the website, which actually is tremendously helpful for staff to go and see what our options are available in the community. Because it tends to change quite often and we don't know who's actually there or not there or was there and then gone and or who's new. Yeah.
So does this work for like snow removal in the wintertime when they need trucks?
Yes, that's another great example where the director of engineering or the department head or a public works manager would do a request for pre-qualification for trucks, for trucking during snow removal process. And we would require insurance, WCB coverage, some of the standard requirements, and you'd have to meet that basic pre-qualification to get on the list for then to receive a phone call to be able to provide that service to us. That's a great example. I just wasn't thinking snow.
Carry on, please.
Okay, page 9 of 16, the town shall accept the evaluated tender with the highest score. The highest score is the tender evaluated as being most advantageous to the town. Would it be possible, now I know we have a certain amount for low.
You know, my biggest thing about the whole purchasing policy, and I'm not complaining about what we have, I'm just thinking we could do better.
In a small town, it is crucial to keep as much money local as you can. And that's mostly why I wanted it brought forward is to see where we could. And it's not really, I don't think it's gonna necessarily tip the scale a lot, but it may give, if a company's gonna volunteer things to the town, why should they not get a couple more points on the scale of whatever you called it here?
CAO Miller had a comment, no?
Yeah, your worship, thank you. That is absolutely gonna require legal opinion. I don't believe we will be able to do that because it's discriminatory. But we can seek legal opinion to confirm my understanding that we would not be able to do that.
How would that be discriminatory? Like, I'm just curious. I'm just curious.
Okay.
CAO Miller?
No, go ahead.
I do jump in, a corporation to an extent is a legal person.
Mhm.
Things that are outside of that are outside of the corporate, like they can't demand people do volunteer work for their company, you can't demand a whole pile of stuff.
Nope, you can't.
So when you're coming into a contract with an entity that is a corporate individual that has like natural person powers within, to a degree, the structure, it's pretty hard to assign a value to one other natural person, and this person is like, well, I'm gonna hire you because you're a nice guy and I'm not gonna hire you because you're, by my definition, not as nice to other people in my community. And now you're making those kind of value judgments that the guy, let's assume, for example, one company does magnificent work and the other guy's work okay, but his work will passes the level of meets the bar. But his people are always in the community doing all kinds of wonderful stuff. Well, how do you make that decision without getting into a value judgment? I'm not arguing against the concept. I'm just saying there would be real difficulties in adjudicating that externally after the fact as to why this person got it. Especially when you're dealing with corporations. I think that I agree with you. I think we would need a legal opinion to see if we can even go down that road. I'm not saying we can't. I just see some real difficulties in it.
So I could just add a bit further to that too. I think it would be really hard to quantify because some people give checks blindly. Some people put their staff out there to work, so it'd be really hard to quantify in addition to.
Oh, I didn't think it'd be easy. I can say it's easy, but.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add to, so we have within our local preference within purchasing policy. And that creates the geographical area around like the trading area, so 25 kilometers around Peace River. And within that policy under 5.2, it says that up to certain dollar thresholds, there's a variance allowed. So, you know, that from an administration's perspective is pretty clear, right? They either qualify or they don't, and depending on the dollar amount, there's that amount given to them. I think it would be very challenging for administration to award to one vendor over another based on some of these more qualitative characteristics. And I think it'd be very challenging to come up with a fair criteria that you could put into a policy that we could then score based on those qualitative elements. I'm not saying it's possible. I'm just saying it could potentially make for some pretty challenging decisions.
Well, I don't want to be ensued, but I think it'd be worth looking into because I think I think these companies would encourage volunteers or companies to volunteer for one thing would be one benefit. But the next thing I wanted to ask was number 53 on page 12 of 16. It refers to has at any time threatened, commenced, or engaged in legal claims or litigation against the town. Is there a time limit on that, or is that as at any time? Is that like if somebody is come after the town legally at some point, they're blacklisted for life, or is it like how does that? Because I think at times, like you shouldn't be punished because you're full of the system. I mean,
Is that 53.2 you're looking at?
that's 53.1.
So the wording of it is the town may in its sole discretion disqualify a supplier from bidding on any bid solicitation or reject a bid if a supplier has, and then under 53.1, at any time threatened, commenced, or engaged in legal claims. So it gives the town the ability to disqualify vendors based on those actions, threatened, commenced, or engaged in legal claims. In my reading of the policy, there's no limitation put on that, but we could undertake to get clarification.
If we could, yeah.
But again, the way that in my reading of this, but it's saying in its sole discretion, it's granting the town authority to make that determination.
And there's no disrespect meant by this, but people tend to hold grudges a long time, and I'm not saying people here, I'm saying people in general. Should we maybe not put a timeline on that, or some sort of forgiveness period? Like I could see you, if somebody sued us for something, obviously they should. But maybe they're in the right, maybe they should be suing us. You know, if Like, I don't know, I'm just questioning. I don't think it should be an open-ended thing, I think it should be. It should have a beginning and an end. There should be a forgiveness period after something. Where, and not necessarily are they gonna win the bid if they are accepted, but I'm just saying. The way I read it. It would be. Acceptable to refuse their bid because they sued us 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's my interpretation.
Yeah, which I think is. I know, unfair, for lack of a better word. It needs to be,
It grants administration a fair bit of
Yeah,
authority to
yeah.
disqualify a
Yeah.
vendor.
yeah,
So again, it's. These are all very situational.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's certainly something that we could explore.
Counselor Good?
My memory, and this is just going on memory and not speaking to the actual issue itself. My memory is that clause was, almost a direct take from from a couple, one or more municipalities who had that clause in their purchasing agreements for whatever reason, so it would be interesting to find out why they had that and just do a bit more investigation into it. And again, I'm not making a judgment one way or the other on the actual idea, but there was a reason for it. It wasn't kind of just like pulled out of the air.
Counselor Scanlon?
I sometimes feel like a lot of the time the town is already kind of like operating with one hand tied behind its back. And any other company that deals with the town is going to, whether it's written down or not, is going to operate in that exact same way. And so my concern is that if we were to put limitations on this, then the town can't get necessarily the best value for the taxpayer because they're not going to be able to negotiate on equal playing field with their vendors. And so any vendor the town deals with, again, would view the world in that exact way as well. And I think it's only fair that on behalf of our taxpayers, administration also has the ability and authority to do the same.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, can you explain a little more?
Okay, so if the town is to negotiate in any kind of deal, you know, whatsoever. And if any two entities are gonna negotiate in any kind of deal, whether it be providing services or whatever, it's most important that they are on equivalent playing fields. So if we were to put restrictions on this particular clause for the town after X number of years or whatever, or whatever other restriction we might put on that, if the town is then entering into negotiations with other organizations that don't have those restrictions, then the town is at a disadvantage. So you can end up with people or companies or entities then gaming the system. Well, you know, we can litigate this way, we cannot do it that way because we can stay inside these boundaries and we can do what's best for us, as they should. And no hard feelings, they're doing what's best for them. I also think the town needs as much freedom to also, administration needs as much freedom as also to do the same from their standpoint.
Actually, I'm just Googling it. There's a number of it, I've just Googled the phrase. And there are numerous municipalities that have that in their purchasing. So it'll be interesting to find out why they have it, where that came from.
Mhm.
Okay, Counselor Carr, more?
Oh, no, no.
Madam Mayor,
No.
Director Bell's comment.
Sorry, reach over. Just one small note on this particular clause. If my memory is serving me well, and I can be corrected if it's not, it's a little mushy right now. Previously, the policy did not include this type of a clause, and administration and council did not have a mechanism at the time to address some very serious situations where For good reasons, there were vendors that the town made a choice of not to engage any further. So having a mechanism of some sort with parameters and whatever that parameter might look like, whether it's this or slightly modified version, is an extremely important component within a policy. There are situations where we need to cut ties with a vendor and we need a mechanism to do that clearly for both the vendor and administration. So we do require some thing within the policy that allows us that direction and clarification of that process. So really important to have in a policy of some sort.
Councillor Carr?
Do we not already have that with the clause that I forget what it says, where we are not bound by the lowest bid? Does
No.
that not?
My example is more in terms of a situation.
I don't know. Legal one, I better call it, somebody suing the town and wants to do business with the town, or had done it at some point. That one?
Yes.
Okay, so. I think for administration, we need a pretty clear cut motion as to what we want them to spend time on. So can you formulate one if you're thinking that way?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to, I'm not exactly sure how I would word the motion, but the intent is, I would like to find, creative, obviously legal ways to keep our money local. Whether it means, sending invitations out, as I've mentioned before, whether it means giving points for volunteerism, whether it means, and I don't know if any of that is legal. I don't know. I wouldn't even begin to guess. But I would like to challenge administration to be creative on how we can keep more money local, to be honest. I don't quite know how I would word it, but that is the intent, is to find creative ways that will not only encourage our local people to bid our work, but also to maybe award them for good behavior, let's say.
Okay, so we have this, the part about, purchasing locally, whatever that was called, the 25 kilometer
Yeah.
thing, so that already fits in that category of thing. Mr. Mudford, did you have a?
Well, just as you're saying them there, like, that's really it's a separate policy, right? The local preference within purchasing policy. That is where we establish those criteria and the amounts. And the trading area of 25 kilometers, that's currently, that's, to use your words, how we're keeping the money local, right? By giving a slight variance for local vendors. So it's up to, for goods and services, up to $10,000, 6%. 10 to 50 is 4%, and 50 to 75,000 is 2.5%. And then on construction, it's 6% up to 10,000. 4% up to 10 up to 50, and 2.5% from 50 up to 200. So, that is giving a slight edge to the local businesses. But to try to establish some other, I'm not saying that it can't be done, I'm just saying that there's a lot of hurdles associated with doing so in a way that's fair.
So those percentages, I'm thinking were set for a reason, basically to still kind of be, legal and above board with respect to all the regulations with respect to this sort of purchasing business. Like, you couldn't say, okay, you're within 25 kilometers, we're going to give you a 25% variance. That would probably be too much. Or,
Well, at some point it would get really costly
Yeah.
if we're willing to add, already if we're adding even 6% on a $20 million budget. Recognizing that there's a lot we can't purchase locally, but still, it can really add up quickly. Which means we would then have to increase the mill rate to be able to fund the additional costs of our purchasing. It becomes a bit of a snowballing effect. So I imagine it has something to do with percentages of the cost to the organization.
hadn't quite thought of it in that element, but so essentially, this could raise the costs of what we're purchasing by these percents.
Absolutely.
Compared to a business more than 25 kilometers away is what it does.
Correct.
It could,
It could.
okay, gotcha, yeah.
Now, this is I'm not making this official, but maybe I'll just put this out there and see what people think. That if council worded it this way, directed men to explore opportunities to prioritize the use of local vendors in the purchasing policy. And then that would give administration, direction and opportunity to see if there are possible legal ways, kind of as Councillor Carr mentioned. If it turns out there's not, there's not. And so it's somewhat, I guess you would say it's intentionally open-ended to allow admin to explore those opportunities. If they don't work out, they don't work out. If it's not legal, it's not legal. But then it would give you guys some direction to just peek in on some of those other things that might be possible. Kind of what we were discussing today.
Okay, my only question is there any expectation that this be done in 5 months or 1 month or something? I just wanna know, cause we're moving into this election business and there's all sorts of things happening, no wise there, so like, is there expectation time wise? Get this brought back or? You know, is,
I think sooner better, but no, I don't think it's a priority.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's a long-term thing.
yeah. Okay,
I
so.
think it's something to keep conscious of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it should be next term by the time things happen here. Okay, as long as we kind of knowing that. Okay, so are you officially moving that or you're?
I can do that.
Okay.
And then that way, who knows, maybe something does come up and it's like, hey, good news, we can make this amendment, great, if
Okay.
it's 6 months from now, it's 6 months from now. So, I'll move to direct admin to explore opportunities to prioritize the use of local vendors in the purchasing policy.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Okay, everybody's clear on the intent of the motion and our discussion about timeline. Okay, so maybe you'll read the motion again, just so I'm clear in my head.
Sure. Direct admin to explore opportunities to prioritize the use of local vendors in the purchasing policy.
Thank you. Again, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, none, so it's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mumford.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Director Bell talking about provincial 2028 Alberta summer or winter provincial games. Or maybe do it, skip one.
Nope. I don't believe so. Thank you, Your Worship. For council's information, there is a letter attached. It's a pretty standard letter that all municipalities or a wide variety of municipalities would have received this spring from the Minister of Tourism and Sport, inviting municipalities to submit bids on the for either the 2028 Alberta Summer or Winter Games. This is specifically the youth focused games that Alberta hosts twice a year. Not twice a year, every 2 years. Boy, that would be a lot of hosting if it was twice a year. I'm in host mode. The town and our regional partners, we actually have quite a history of hosting games. 2008, Alberta Winter Games was hosted by our regional municipalities, the town of Peace River included. 2010, Alberta Summer Games was hosted again in the region. And most recently, the 2021 turned into the 2022 Alberta Seniors Games was hosted by 5 municipalities. Alberta Games for Youth are substantive numbers of individuals that participate. It's a significant amount of volunteer requirement. We're looking at approximately 1,800 volunteers that would be required, and anywhere from 2,000, 2,500 or up to 3,000 participants, depending on the amount of sports that you participate in. There are some variation in options within hosting a games. The Alberta Winter Games in 2010, we held those over 1 weekend. The 2010 Summer Games, we held a slightly different model, was a 2-shift games. So half of the participant came for 3 days, and there was a turnover day, and then the next half of the participant came, attended the community in the next 3-day section. So it made for quite a different event, where we were reusing existing facilities for other sports. It made it a very long week for volunteers, but there was some bonuses in terms of being able to maximize opportunities with facilities. We are moving into a slightly different scenario than we were in the early 2000s. We, in the 2021/22 Alberta Seniors Games, different target, so participation from different volunteers potentially, but sport wise, actually quite similar, smaller scale. We struggled to build the board of directors, and that is the key piece, is having a board of directors. For hosting a large provincial event, you are required to have a board of directors. We did have a seat empty, we did not fill a fundraising seat, and then we also had created a sort of the activities tour guide idea, which we never were able to fulfill and get off the ground for the seniors games. So we were post-COVID, so we felt some impacts there, but we did struggle with that organizational piece, and the town actually took on the fundraising component, and my staff took on more work. So it's a bit of a pre-warning. There is volunteer fatigue. You see it and hear it all the time. Doesn't mean that volunteers won't rally. They do. The dissolution of the Games Society. You might not think this is an important piece, but it was a pretty critical piece for all of our games situations. What we had was the Peace Region Games Society developed from the first set of games, actually developed in our bid process for the Arctic Winter Games. We've bid, I believe, twice now, previous to hosting the Alberta Summer and Winter Games. That society developed, and we kept it in sort of a holding pattern between hosting of major events, which made our activation extremely efficient. We had a chair, and we had at least 5 to 6 board members built in already. So then expanding from there was quite, still always a challenge. Roping people into volunteering isn't always the easiest thing to do. During the winter games, I was telling our community services board, I had people sort of running away from me at the co-op when they saw me coming, because they knew what I was gonna be asking. But that society after the seniors games has dissolved, formally dissolved after over 10-15 years of keeping it in caretaker mode. The committee, there was only 3 or 4 of us left. The interest waned in terms of maintaining that. We did hear some significant feedback after the Alberta Winter and Summer Games. We heard very clearly from our provincial advisors that our travel distances for participants were way too long. So we hosted far afield because we needed the total participation of 10 to 12 municipalities, one to be able to access all the facilities we needed. For a winter games, we need 6 ice surfaces. And we can't assume that some of our smaller ice rinks will actually meet the standards of the sports. We've run into that problem before. We actually ran into it with the track for the 2010 Summer Games. If everyone remembers, those of us who have been here a while, pre-rubberized track surface, the asphalt surface did not meet the requirements of the Alberta athletics track and field requirements. That is why we had to upgrade that, turn that into a capital project at the 11th hour, well, the last year prior to hosting, build, upgrade the track and rubberize it and so forth. So just saying we have 10 rinks within an hour radius does not necessarily equate to we have 6 rinks that are usable. Size and requirements, there's all sorts of details. Because we've had to host as a region, those kids are sitting on a bus. For example, during the summer games, baseball was held in Manning. So kids were on this bus at 6 a.m. or 6:30 in the morning for at least an hour and an hour and 20 on a school bus, hour and a half going one way. So that's 3 hours of their day on a school bus. We heard from the provincial advisors that it wasn't the preferred situation. Bidding is quite tight. We would have to have a letter of intent in by the end of June, and quite frankly, with our most recent activation for reception center, there is 0 capacity. But I provided you what I feel, and after discussions with the community services board at our last board meeting, a really viable option for the future. Because it's not that there isn't a want or a need to host a set of games, whatever level that might be, whether it's Alberta Summer, Winter, or the seniors games again. The bid request process for a community it's a bit of a challenge. The request comes in from the province. If we're talking about needing to include 10 municipalities, that's a big conversation that needs to happen in advance. And you literally have 3 or 4 months period. Trying to get all those municipalities involved is very difficult on the front end. Plus, we'd also need multiple other significant partners. School divisions are a must. They have the transportation, they have the schools, they are a significant partner in this. So our recommendation is to start having these conversations now and building a more robust system to be prepared for a future ask. So in 2 years, when there's another round of invites, those pre-conversations and even possibilities of conversations that were actually drafted a bid package where a decision potentially is made on whether it's the seniors games or a winter games or a summer youth games, whatever it might be. We've engaged the appropriate organizations, your swim clubs, your baseball groups, ski hills, whatever it is, and build some capacity and build some relationship and community readiness in preparing for a formal bid for the future.
I was the alternate attendee at the community services meeting where this was discussed. And they also brought up the idea, like, you take the Manning example. Some of the time, the reason for getting into this games process is, well, it'll bring economic development, or not development, but it'll bring a surge in your economy, sort of thing. And they said, well, let's consider that. Who does the parent go to watch when their kid is playing softball or something in Manning? They go all day to Manning, and they might stay in the town somehow, but that's about it. They're not doing much else other than the hotel, if that. Food, well, I'm all day in another town, maybe I camp, sort of thing. So there's that consideration. It's not necessarily a direct piece of the economy that's being helped, maybe it's the region, so good or bad there, but there's just another consideration, sort of thing. So,
It's sort of, it almost sprinkles the economic development to the region,
yeah.
which has definitely benefits regionally wide. I believe Councillor Shannon has a.
Oh, Councillor Shannon, yeah.
I agree with Tanya, you know, or Director Bell, sorry, I remember, I was there. I remember all those times that you struggled and, you know, for not only the leadership part, but the volunteers. And I think now we're at a point where the volunteerism is even at a lower level. So I think I agree. I think if we can build capacity and get there, because it is an economic influx, there is no doubt for the region as good as for Peace River. But I think you got to build that capacity and kind of reroute things, especially after COVID. We lost a lot of support in that volunteer sector. So I agree. I think it's something for a future. And that's a very short timeline for you to get that application in as well. I remember those days clearly, and we are not where we used to be.
Thank you. Councillor Good?
Just wondering when the letter came. There's no date on the letter
Yeah.
that I could see.
It was in one of our council communication packages a bit ago, not long ago.
April-ish.
Sorry?
April is coming to mind.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
But the director's recommendation there about getting prepared, so you know that there's bound to be a seniors game sometime, there's bound to be a youth something. So if energy was put into that ahead of time and then here's the game, okay, let's.
Well, and there may be opportunities, sorry, Councillor Scanlon, to host somewhat different types of major events. So for example, a little tiny sport called pickleball is just taking off. And I know our local pickleball club are looking to host a major event. So there are other ways where we can support existing organizations in their hosting capacity and build from there. Because there's a great example of it's an adult sport. Those folks are mobile, they're coming to the community, booking hotels, eating in your restaurants. The economic turnaround on something like that could be very substantive, if not more, than hosting a youth games where you're using classrooms and you need multiple volunteers 24/7. There might be other opportunities for hosting different types of events that your ROI could be even better. Yeah.
Other comments, Councillor Scanlon?
Well, I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, hosting a bonspiel, pickleball, this slow pitch tournaments, these kinds of things, but trying to run an entire track meet, an entire softball tournament, a baseball tournament, all these things all at the same time is much different. We've got some provincial school sport bids coming in for the coming year as well, which are really great. So I would be curious about even just ignoring the whole idea of doing one of these giant games things. And if you were to, you know, put together a committee or try to put together a committee to do these kinds of hosting, have them focus in on the more individual tournaments and sports and events as opposed to these giant comprehensive mini Olympics ideas where the number of volunteers and officials and everything is just really
Substantial.
outside reality.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. The, just for council's information, and you'll see this at an upcoming meeting in later June for your council grants to organizations. The Glen Mary School and Peace River High School are jointly hosting the 2A girls and boys basketball provincials here in 2026. March, is that?
That's the one
Yep.
they're bidding on to host. or
I
they have-
believe they've received the bid approval,
Oh, wow.
which is great. That's, I wanna say they hosted volleyball, boys volleyball.
A lot of the
provincials.
time, those
Yeah.
provincials, you get one gender
Yeah.
in one town and the
Not
other
both.
goes to the other. So
Yeah.
for it to be a joint thing with both
It's pretty big.
it's not insignificant.
Yeah.
March Madness.
March Madness.
Councilor Card?
I would assume if a community hosts these kind of large events, it comes at quite a cost to the community. I see they give you money, but I mean, is it generally a break-even thing, or do you usually end up subsidizing quite heavily?
It's significant. Our previous budget, and I actually needed to go and find the paper, because we don't have, from 2010, we didn't have a digitized version. But our budget at that time, I'm sure, was over $1 million, 1.25, 1.5. So the suggestion that these games for hosting, especially in our region, would only be $1 million, $1.5 million, I suggest otherwise. With the cost, the way they've gone up for gas, even with carbon tax being removed, we're at least $1.5 million for our youth games at the bare minimum. Just catering, food service. Substantive. We have to have a location for 1,000 people for one seating. That's huge.
And if you are hosting regionally and they'll give you $500,000 to do it, but you need 10 municipalities to do it with, how do you divvy up $500,000 10 ways?
Well, you have a host organization and the funds go to them, but we make sure that there's an event in each municipality so that those municipalities have participation as opposed to just
Their name.
yeah, their name, but they're usually a break even. They have been in the past. The seniors game, we had a small surplus. I believe it was about 40,000, maybe 50 at the most.
And that got disseminated to
Back to community groups.
groups eventually.
Yeah, the years prior to, I believe there was a surplus of 100,000 within that range. But municipalities were asked to provide, I believe the town of Peace River provided 150,000 to one of the sets of the games. I don't remember which one. So the municipal ask is also pretty substantive financially. Yeah.
And those were those dollar figures, and
Yeah.
today's dollars are
Much higher, unfortunately, yeah.
Okay, so would someone like to put forth a motion of some sort to direct admin? On any?
Move that council receive the letter for information.
Okay, so, and that means, okay, that's the letter. Are you then saying the idea about gathering a group to possibly get started on a hosting thought process? That's not part of your thing, okay?
For now, I'm happy to withdraw if someone has something better. Okay, could move to accept the letter for information and refer the item to the community services board.
Yeah, and this could be a good economic development / community services boards
conversation, committee's conversation per se, Councillor Chen, that's her hand raised.
Oh, I can't see that yellow one, the background there. Councillor Shannon? Mhm.
I was just gonna say, Director Bell had a good idea when she brought forward the event planning scenario, so maybe she could somehow modify that to be cohesive with a plan for future events, future regional events or something like that, and then that would cover Councillor Scamahorn's motion as well.
Yes, open to any and all friendly amendments.
But I agree with Councillor Scamahorn's motion.
Okay, thanks. Anything else before we look at this friendly amendment?
I mean, try to rework this statement to include a few things.
Sure.
Perhaps receive a letter for information and refer the item to the Economic Development and Community Services Board for further execution.
Do you want to include the idea about
Well, that could come from,
posting?
that could come when the item comes to those committees, then
Okay,
those committees could work out the economic side and then the services side of the opportunity.
any further discussion? Ms. Parsons, what might the motion be?
So if this works,
Please do.
move the council receive the 2028 Alberta Games invitation letter for information and refer the initiation of a strategic hosting plan to the Economic Development Committee and Community Services Board for further investigation.
Precisely.
That's exactly what I heard.
Sounds like everybody's agreeing with that's what they heard.
Hold it right out of my.
Okay, so everybody understands the motion and the intent?
Well said.
Yeah, very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm just surprised
It
in
is-
myself.
Thank you.
It is carried. Thank you, Director Bell. And next up, we have, where are we here? Peace Library System Agreement with CAO Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Peace Library System has forwarded for consideration of council an updated master services agreement. The Peace Library System was formed in 1986, and the membership includes regional municipalities, school authorities, improvement districts, Métis settlements, and other eligible jurisdictions. Services. Peace Library System was formed under the Libraries Act, and the intention is to provide centralized services to municipal library boards. Services such as centralized purchasing, cataloging, processing the books, IT services, borrowing materials between the libraries and borrowing, materials from throughout the province, from universities and secondary educations. So there were a number of changes within the agreement that was proposed. And it does require ratification by 23 or 2/3 of the membership, any changes to the agreement. The major changes within this new master services agreement includes section 15. It updated and improved the clarity regarding arbitration and dispute resolution. Section 9 and Schedule C and D includes addition of information technology services as one of the services available to the parties in the agreement. Schedule A includes an updated list of eligible membership within the Peace Library System, and Schedule B including language that limits the amount that levies can be raised in any given year. There are a number of other changes that are a bit more minor throughout the report. I'm not sure if council wants me to speak to all of them that they're outlined there, but the principal ones of concern were section 15, section 9, Schedule A and Schedule B. Did you want me to speak to all of them and answer?
I have a feeling that people will have reviewed it, so if you could speak to the ones
Perfect.
you want to highlight.
So there were some new clauses in addition to some changes through all the clauses that were though highlighted in the report. New clauses include, there's a new clause for no waiver. Clause 21 speaks to severability. Clause 22 speaks to assignment. Clause 23 speaks to jurisdiction. And clause 24 speaks to independent legal advice. When looking at Schedule B, there's a removal of clause 2 that speaks to municipal library board appropriation. And Schedule C, there was a bit of a change to books on request program. So as we reviewed the changes that were put forward, there are really one concern that's been administration's attention. And that is the part around levies. So in the letter, under levies, Peace Library System, the letter indicated that there was no change in levies charged for a number of years, actually since 2016, I believe it said. And so, yeah, it does read that prior to 2023, the levy had not changed for 7 years, from 2016 to 2023. It remained the same, yet the rate of inflation was 20%. However, reviewing it, in January 2015, we did receive an amended Schedule B of the agreement, which was then ratified by 2/3 of the membership that approved an increase of 5% for 2016, 2017, and 2018. And then I thought there was an increase also in 2023, but there wasn't an increase. So there wasn't one in 2019 to 2023. But then in 2024 and 2025 and 2026 moving forward, there was an additional 5% added each year to the rates. So cumulatively, there's been 5% increases over that time, which actually equal 25%. And rate of inflation from 2015 has been 25.8%. So although they missed a number of years, they have caught up to inflation. So prior to the 2023 rate increases were ratified by the membership by way of 2/3 of approval. And the ratification process, for some reason, was not undertaken to authorize the 5% increase that was implemented in 23, 24, and 25. Rather, the library board just simply sent a letter stating that these increases were going to be occurring. When administration questioned the authority at that time to arbitrarily increase rates by 5% year over year without being ratified by the membership, a response was provided that was given the March 22, 2014 board member minutes of the Peace Library System that simply had a motion in there stating that they were going to be increasing the rates 5% from 2016 and beyond. So despite administration's concern at the time not being fully addressed and it not being overtly clear how the board could adjust 5% each year without requiring approval, given that they are not a requisitioning board as defined under the Municipal Government Act, being new to the town and unfamiliar with the agreements, no further action was taken at that time. With the refreshed revised agreement, and we were taking a look at that, administration also pulled the bylaw. And there within the bylaw was noted under Article 4.3, it speaks to membership fees. And in the bylaw, particularly Article 4.3.2, setting membership fees states, in part, that amendment of the fee schedule in the master agreement for full memberships requires receipt by the board of written authorization from 2/3 of the full membership. So administration interprets that article to mean that the increase of the levies that were implemented in 23, 24, and 25 were done so without authority, given that there was no approval to do so through successful ratification of the 2/3 of the membership. While many of the changes within the amended agreement are straightforward and simply clarify or strengthen the agreement, the ability to unilaterally increase the annual levy by up to 5% year over year is concerning to administration. This would mean that in a 5-year period, they could increase the levy by 25%. In a time where we're being asked to keep budget increases to a minimum, to make cuts and find spending efficiencies, the ability to increase rates by 5% without approval by the parties does not seem justifiable. Of course, we recognize that the library board, like all of us, are challenged with rising costs to goods and services. And we would, to address this, recommend that wording be changed, that the board members could only approve increases equivalent to CPI each year to a maximum of 3%. And anything over and above that would require it to go back to the membership for ratification. And doing so would then keep everybody's municipal budgets a little bit more in line. Given that this is an article within the bylaw that requires ratification by the membership, should council so choose to approve the wording as it is, we would recommend then that the board also needs to change their bylaw to affect the way they plan to change levy increases in the future. So council, we are just seeking direction on how you'd like us to respond to this master agreement proposal.
So I have been the library system, the rep to the library system for Peace River for several years. And the way that the budget process frankly has worked is we've always been under the impression that if we wanted to go more than 5%, then we had to go to the municipalities and request that formally and get the 2/3. Under 5%, it was based on whatever the budget is requiring. And as a board, I can say that they're pretty conservative in what they spend their monies on. But that's all I'll say on that as the representative. So questions on this? So this master agreement, basically, it's like, well, it's a big agreement with 40+ members that hopefully lasts for several years. And that's part of the reason why it's not looked at every second year to get it changed. The library members are each looking at this master document and being asked to approve it. And if 2/3 of them approve it, then it would probably go for it. That's my understanding. Or you could withdraw from the system, which means your local library would be decimated essentially in terms of the programs and the support that they get from the system. But anyways, I won't say any more. Other questions, concerns? Where to go from here on this? So admin is making has concerns and just trying to see how we can. So we can approve it as is. We can say agree with most of it, except disagree with this the levy part of things or other stuff too. Answer card.
So is the 5% that you referred to, was that approved by all the members or was that approved by the board? So it didn't come to any of the councils for that number, it just, so I guess it'd be kind of like Northeast Housing where they say it's this much
And that's where CAO Miller is saying, well, it's not like Northeast Housing because Northeast Housing by law
School board, it's a requisition.
can requisition and
Legislation.
they can't requisition and yet money needs to come from someplace. They do get a library grant, but it doesn't cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at I'm looking at page 15, which is the one with the purple in it. It's page 67 of 142. And this is the new clause. or clauses, Schedule B is, CEO Miller referred to. And, it lays out, 2026's, full-time, or per capita costs. But if you read, say, Part A, for those municipalities without municipal library boards, so this would be like, Northern Sunrise looks after Napa and Saint Isidore. So Northern Sunrise becomes the overseer. So in 2026, the per capita would be $10.11. In 2027 and subsequent years, the local appropriation would be determined on the basis of approved budgets and estimates based on clause 8.2 of this agreement. The raise in levy may not be more than 5% increase from the previous year without approval of at least 2/3 of the signatories to this agreement. So that's where we're trying to kind of balance going to 40 people each year for budget approval. And taking how much time to do that. We also are under some deadlines with respect to our budget approvals. There is another page 128 of 142, which lays out the changes that CAO Miller referred to, which is talking about the 5% accumulated over time. So I don't know how to go forward from here.
But when, I'm sort of battling with a number here, which is 5% or.
The 5%, I should say, probably.
If it's inflationary, like
Yeah.
if it's an inflationary protection, you could use, take your pick of which inflationary number you want to use as your reference. Because depending on how the economy goes, it might be 0.1% one year as an inflationary thing, or it might be 10% the next year, depending on what goes on. And we kind of recognize that inflation can be a weird animal depending on political expediencies, everything else. So why not, rather than having the 5%, it shall not exceed the rate of inflation over that period of time? Because then, and even then, bring it back for approval, because then you've got something that you're already giving the logic to it.
I guess the other side of that coin is, say the rate of inflation was 3%. That means, okay, 3% on your costs going up, but it does not really include some staffing things, like their grids can go up automatically depending on how it's set up. And it could amount to more than that inflation because there's a grid step as well as a COLA kind of thing, maybe. I have to argue that point a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. 5%, I think, did come about because it was thought to be, okay, that's a pretty big number. Can't go beyond there without really going and saying to the municipalities, okay, it needs to be 7% this year. Are you gonna okay it or not? Sort of thing. But 5% was thought to be, I think the reasoning, and it's been 5% for quite a while in this document, was sort of something that was livable if needed. And I equate it to Northeast Housing a few years ago when they had to increase suddenly quite a bit. And the discussion around the municipalities at that point was, well, let's have a steady increase and not a jump in increase. And I think theirs was something like 10%. It was kind of thought to be reasonable heat of it. Sorry, CAO Miller.
On a financial and perspective basis, it would be much wiser to keep it to CPI and do an increase every year if CPI goes up. Would in part created this problem as there was a number of years with no increase. And so despite wages going up and whatnot, there was no increase. And then all of a sudden, there's a burden on the municipalities that are funding this to have to fund 5%, 5%, 5%. So in my humble opinion, it would be better to tie it, to approve it to CPI. If CPI goes down, you keep it, I guess, at zero, or some places you take CPI, whether it goes up or down, you reduce, but council could make the motion, or keep it the same. And again, make sure an increase happens every year to keep up with inflation.
Counselor Good?
I think that also, excuse me, allowing it to come back to the municipalities periodically is a good idea. The reason for that is, even if you have your inflationary increases, you can have necessary increases. For example, when computers really came on board, or for example, right now you're having the transition between Windows 10 hitting a brick wall and needing to upgrade a whole bunch of hardware. You can make those arguments to the municipality because they're a necessity for the library to keep maintaining its service at what I would call an adequate level, given all of the other cultural and physical kind of things that they're going to run into. You're probably going to see an effect of AI on municipalities over the next number of years. It's going to take some dollars to work with. These things are not zero cost items. So I think you have to have that mechanism, but I like the idea of tying it, let's say, like you say, yearly increase to CPI without having to come back and revisit the trough. But when you need those extraordinary things, then bringing it back to the municipalities for consideration. I think we all know how important libraries are. I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't either use one or have family members that use them or kids that use them or whatever. I think they're important to a community for any number of reasons. But I think it's better to have that, I'd rather than having a fixed 5, I'd rather have the CPI regular, because then they can count on that. They can say, no matter what happens, we can budget with this. Now we need these extra things. Let's go and make our case.
Anyone else? CAO Miller?
Sorry, I do have one more comment, and that is, it seems, just looking at some of the historical document, that Schedule B, which was the rate schedule, would come in a 3-year block. So they would send a letter saying, this is the rates for the next 3 years. I'm imagining it was because it used to be 3-year election cycles. I'm only speculating, but I'm thinking is that it would be a 3-year election cycle. They would introduce those rates to the council, and the council would say, we're good for those next 3 rates. Now we have a 4-year election cycle. I'm not sure, so correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just speculating because I see these amendments to the agreement.
I think it was usually every 3 years to provide some certainty for municipalities in their planning. So that going forward, they knew, their operating parts of things. So I think it was part of that. So, yeah. Any other comments? So perhaps someone can make a motion as to how or what they would see as Peace River Town Council's response to this master agreement and any changes they see or they would like to recommend to it. So you can say, we would approve the master agreement with the exception of Schedule B, if that's the one, and Schedule B should instead say something different. Counselor Good wants to give it, okay,
I'll take a shot at it.
okay, Ms. Parsons, you have something?
I was just gonna say, for this one, it's just giving direction. So
Oh,
like
right.
direction to write to the library board or to library systems, asking for a change, or if council's happy with how it is, a direction to bring it back for approval at the next meeting or something. Just no.
I think at some point, the library board either needs the municipal approval or non-approval
Mhm.
as one, like, major thing, and the other changes put forth someplace too. That's my opinion. They want, you're either gonna sign on or you're not gonna sign on eventually to this. And that's a major decision otherwise too. Mr. Boychuk might have something to say about that too.
Well, what she said, what Kayla said, with the inclusion to consider the concept of a CPI, of a yearly CPI increase in the interim and every, and sort of bring it back to municipalities when necessary or when considered advisable. Use some terminology, but to consider the concept of the CPI increase and regular or scheduled reconsideration of other items. Other parts of Schedule B.
And bring it back for extraordinary expenditures or.
Sure. Very expenditures.
Which are what?
Sorry?
Well, if it doesn't,
Which are
I'm
what?
imagining if it doesn't
You don't
fit into your. I'm imagining if your budget doesn't, CPI doesn't cover it because you have some extraordinary expenses that year, such as.
The Windows
Artificial
10 wall or
intelligence
whatever,
software.
sure.
Because some of these increases are built with kind of a master asset management plan in effect too. So,
The reason I bring up the Windows 10 thing is that was something that was sort of sprung on the world.
Mhm.
And wasn't, I mean, it was kind of talked about for a while, but it really wasn't outside of certain circles understood that there was going to be such a sort of, because you had computers that were 13 and 15 years old, still functioning absolutely fine and being updated and everything like that, until the Windows 10 11 situation came along, and then it was Windows 10 is ending and your computer is no longer secure, period. Well, that's something where you might have run for those 10 years very, very adequately on what you had. And now you're at a wall, you gotta replace almost everything you have in your shop, so it can be expensive.
so part of what the Peace Library system does in the IT department is look after that for all of their libraries. So it does look after the security business and the upgrading business and all of that sort of thing. They don't buy the computers necessarily for individual libraries,
Right.
but they have standards to which they should keep if they want to be supported. Okay, so where are we at?
I would, your worship, I was gonna say with that motion then, and we were to write to the library board, we would also mention if that does not happen, their bylaws need to be amended. Because the bylaw requires.
Can you be very specific on what you're
Yeah, yeah.
saying? Because we have had discussions about when the 2/3 kicks in and when it doesn't.
If they pass this motion though, the way it is, we still have an amendment to the bylaw,
Yeah,
The 5.01.
Yes.
right? Yeah.
more than.
More than.
Sorry. So where are we at?
Potential motion, that council direct administration to write the Peace Library system seeking consideration for a change to Schedule B, to be related to CPI and addition of language that large monetary asks come forward to members to the agreement. But it should be, consideration for a change to Schedule B for budgetary increases to be related to CPI. Yeah. Rate changes, sorry, for
Yearly.
levy increases to be related to CPI.
Yeah, I'm just. Okay, do you want to read that again once again?
Yep, that council direct administration to write PLS seeking consideration for a change to Schedule B for levy increases to be related to CPI and addition of language that large monetary asks come forward to members to the agreement for approval.
And they may come up with a better idea. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that too.
And they may say.
We can't live with it. We're gonna come
Yeah.
back with it.
They may say 2/3 have already approved and you either sign or you don't.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, so everybody's understanding that motion? Okay, then, everybody in favor of the motion, well, actually, we're gonna have to do this, everybody in favor of the motion,
Aye.
opposed? It was carried. Thank you. Okay, next up,
Just for curiosity's sake, we have recorded votes in GMP and everything.
I don't know. Recorded votes in GMP, I don't know. Yeah, it's good. Okay, next up, we have reports, and the first one is the May 2025 monthly development report. And she's.
I just, been asked if you could just accept it for information. I may be able to answer some questions, but
Okay, I just have to find it here. Does anyone have any questions on building permits, demolition permits, et cetera, et cetera? Apparently, we're good to go on that one then. Okay, so next up would be May 2025's Protective Services report with the monthly call volume for May with Director Chris.
A little tall there, sorry. Your worship council. As you see in my monthly report for May 2025, it was not as well, we did quite well. But we also, two of our guys are off on training courses for the first part of the month. And then as we progress through the rest of the month, you can see that, we were very busily picking up on stuff, especially with the warm weather approaching now. Unsightly, we did 19 complaints on unsightly, 8 trespassing, 14 traffic offenses, 29 parking. And these aren't tickets, they're just complaints that's come in. 16 routine patrols, so that is every morning before we start, we patrol the town looking for garbage encampment. Public complaints that's come in over the phone or by email is 17, 2 land use bylaw, 2 garbage and 1 graffiti. So total 108 complaints. We also had 5 provincial tickets, 20 town tickets and 10 warning tickets. As of year date, when I sent this report in, it was 515 files created this year already. 10 encampments were taken down last month. Garbage is cleaned up on sites. So we've been patrolling, looking for garbage that's been left on benches, in the gazebos, on the street. We pick it up immediately and discard it right away. And then, as acting as Dem on last week there, I helped, ESS set up their center, got that mobile, work with them. It was very, very knowledgeable and learning experience with them. They're very, very good team. Then we obtained a new Fox Creek vehicle from Fox Creek. So that put another fleet into our thing, so now we're patrolling. And we are still looking for the additional CPO. We had 27 applicants file in, but we are going through the process right now to bring them down. And that's it for May.
Okay, councilors, questions, Councilor Carr.
I had sent an email a while back, but I didn't receive a response, and it wasn't urgent by any means, but graffiti, do we have a? You have a bylaw, he says, is there a fine that comes with that?
There is, it's $1,000 fine for graffiti, yeah. So we have to catch that person, or someone has to, says, we caught this person doing the graffiti. We will lay a charge and we'll take them automatic to court for that.
Okay, that's one other one. I sent in a complaint on behalf of somebody else the other day as well, I'm sure you, regarding the old Highway 2 and the Jake brakes or brake retarders that these gravel trucks are using. We do have a bylaw against that in town, do we not?
Yes, it's called an engine retard brake. There is a fine for that. And then, we just been so busy with encampment that we'll be getting onto that as soon as we have our additional guy. So then we'll be 4 on, 4 days, then he'll be off 4, but that other guy will start 4 days. So there'll be 7-day coverage, so then we can move away from all this stuff downtown and we can get it, start doing, cause our gentleman's, hopefully the new person as well, has weights and dimensions and all that as well. So we'll be able to look at everything to make sure the town is safe and the road infrastructure is good.
Does so the break business, it would work from the West Hill, wherever the town sign is, all the way down to that stoplight?
It goes all the way through the municipality of the town limits. So they're not allowed to use it in the town limits.
Good to know, because I've been at conferences at the Chateau Nova, and one goes by and you're not hearing the speaker.
Yes.
Yeah, and do you know the fine offhand?
Not right off, I think it's $100 or $150 per truck.
Yes,
Counselor Boychuk, or Deputy Mayor Boychuk did have his hand up. I don't know if
I didn't see it, sorry.
still.
I just had a quick question. That's all right.
Yes, please.
Wondering about how much time you're spending taking these encampments down. You say take 10 encampments down. I'm just wondering what type of time and expense the town's looking at for those.
Depends on who's doing it right now. Usually it's Officer White and Officer Austin. They're patrolling, they're getting complaints and they're going in and taking it right down. Usually takes about an hour or two. Time they fold everything up and get it the garbage, depends on how big it is. This morning, myself and Officer Austin, we took 2 tents down. We were all done within an hour. So we had it all torqued down and put into storage and for 30 days until further notice. It's getting easier because the camps are not being set up as much now, but I find it's being a lot better, the town's a lot better in the last couple weeks. Working with the individuals that do hang on the streets, they're actually working with us a lot better.
Great, any other questions of Councilor Pacific?
Anecdotally, I would say that I've noticed the same. But being that you're kind of more out and about and your crew is more out and about, are you noticing a bit of a different crowd? Are they just a more mellow crowd now? Are there some that seem to have moved on since some, organizational changes in the downtown area, let's say?
Yes, some have moved on. We still have probably approximately 10 that have been here since I've been here. They're not hanging around the daytime, they disappear, and then they're coming out around at nighttime. But, no, it's not as bad as it was when I first got here.
Good to hear.
Yes.
Any further questions or discussion? Oh, looks like we're good to go then. Well, thank
Thank
you,
you.
and you have good work.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a council monthly event report. Councilor Shannon is here. Councilor Shannon, anything you want to highlight or questions for Councilor Shannon?
There's nothing in particular I need to highlight.
Okay. Okay, onwards then, next one up is the May 24th, 2025 Peace Library Board meeting highlights, and that's with me. And basically, talking about some of what Councilor Good referred to in terms of help desk software and stuff like that. So if you look on this list, this is municipalities that are in here, and the bottom quick facts tells you how many municipalities. There are 7, one Métis settlement, and serving 178,000 people, which sounds like a lot, but it's spread all over northwestern Alberta. And we get the same kind of funding as does a smaller geographically contained system down south. Next up, we have the monthly RCMP, let's see here. Peace Regional RCMP Community Advisory Committee meeting minutes, and I see that, I don't know if someone attended in Councillor Ford's place. He's marked as absent on the.
was given it was a meeting that was on a Tuesday, which is not usual, and he had reached out to me and said to attend on the Wednesday, so I went, hung out in the parking lot, realized I was showing up, and went and did something else.
Okay. Okay, well, got the report that people can read, I guess. And maybe someone would now move that council accept reports 9-1 through 9-5 for information. Councillor Carr so moves. All those in favor? Great.
Aye.
Carried. Okay, for information, we have the council communication package of May 23rd. I note that in here, the first item is, Alberta Munis is, I think, trying to organize some sort of a seminar or engagement about the police funding model. Many questions from there. And other than that, does anybody want to highlight some of these things? Outgoing correspondence, we already attended to number 1. We did write a letter to the Electoral Commission, which is coming to Peace River actually on June 17th, I believe. They will be down at the Chateau Nova if anybody wants to hang out and see what one of these things is like. Other than that, anything further on that? Nope, good. Okay, then, would someone move that council accept item 10-1 for information? Councilor or Deputy Mayor Boychuk? Nod your head, yeah.
I so move.
He so moves. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, it is carried. Okay, do people want a bit of a break or would you like to go directly into closed session?
Are these long items or are these pretty quick items?
Want to be a little bit of a discussion?
Okay, take 5.
5 minutes then, okay, so 6:36, we'll back here at 6:41.
But, and just to the
Oh,
public that we won't be back.
public, we will not be back for you, sorry.